Hello and welcome to Nobody Noon's Racial Trivia series where we focus on a particular race from the Warcraft universe and discuss both its history and any alteration in the World of Warcraft game by Blizzard. Today's racial trivia is on the Black Dragonflight. Though the Black Dragonflight was nearly annihilated in ages past, a few of the evil creatures have made their homes in the dry, desolate wastes of the Barrens, while others have maintained their position in the searing gorge and the burning steppes. With their lord Deathwing either missing or dead, the Black Dragons seek to appease only themselves. The creatures are immensely powerful and cruel, and revel in mortal suffering. The Black Dragons are the enemies of every other dragonflight, especially the great red dragons of Lordaeron, and to a greater extent, all of life on Azeroth. Like all the other dragonflights, the Black Dragonflight is also a host of a wide variety of draconic kind. This includes black worms, black dragons, black drakes, black whelps, black dragon spawns, and black dragonids. Today we're going to be looking at Warcraft RPG Shadow and Light, page 92 through 94, under Neltharion the Earth Warder, Deathwing. Deathwing was once known as Neltharion the Earth Warder, a great protector of the land, but some unknown crisis in the distant past changed him and his kind forever. His side split open, revealing his molten heart, and fire and magma poured out his body. To keep his body together, Deathwing was forced to bind adamantium to his spine, making his body nearly impenetrable. Upon his irrevocable shift to evil, he turned against his destiny and began to delight in causing suffering wherever he could. He fought wars against other dragons, slaying several and driving many of them into hiding. His changes to the land forced the mortal races to battle for resources, and many claim Deathwing is the true cause behind the wars that have for so long scoured the face of Azeroth. Deathwing has been absent from his lair for several years. No one is certain where he has gone, or if he has in fact been slain. The remaining black dragons of his flight are now engaged in a battle for dominance over one another. Deathwing was once a protector of the earth and land, but is now the enemy of all who defend life and nature. Although he is no deity, he is often worshipped by evil creatures and enjoys basking in the glow of abject servitude. He also likes to watch his allies fight among each other for favor in his eyes. Those who please him earn rewards. Those he dislikes tends to meet with a torturous end. Venerating such a god is a dangerous proposition indeed. This next passage can be found in Warcraft RPG Manual of Monsters, page 28, under Black Dragon. The dragon is a large, thickly built creature with a massive chest and a long, sinuous neck. Its hide is a rich, lustrous black, with large scales that are supple yet hard as rock. A crest made of peaked bone spikes runs from its head and down its back, and bristles as the great beast grows angry. Its fangs shine a coppery red, and deep inside its mouth a constant sulphurous light emits a faint glow. Under Description. While some, notably the orcs, call them regal, most civilized races say that black dragons have a cruel, callous look to their serpentine faces. Black dragons do not shed individual scales, but rather molt once a year, usually by spending a week resting within the lava flow of an active volcano, which peels off and consumes their discarded skin. The skin of a black dragon nearing its molt grows dull and gray. Black dragons are large creatures and prefer meat to all other fare. They spend their time hunting as well as watching the various wars around the world and can often be found torturing prisoners, animals, or anything else unfortunate enough to fall into their care. Under Black Dragon Society. Black dragons are ruled by one of the fiercest and most evil creatures in existence, the aspect known as Deathwing. Deathwing is an immense black leviathan who epitomizes the strongest qualities of his race: viciousness, cruelty, and cunning. His fury is unrivaled, and his wrath has destroyed many ancient cities. He revels in mortal suffering. Deathwing often makes deals with intelligent races, trading members of his dragonflight for slaves and humanoid torture subjects. Deathwing's flight takes after its ancient lord, seeking to outdo one another and to prove their worth to their dragon prince. Those who fail are enslaved and sold, usually to the orcs, as unworthy subjects. Those who succeed can glory to Deathwing's favor until another, more cunning usurper steals their coveted place by Deathwing's side. It was not always so. Black dragons were once earth warders, caring for stone and mountain and using their formidable abilities to cause the rise and fall of terrain. They were to watch as the world of Azeroth changed and to maintain boundaries and lines of delineation between the races so that none would fall to war over land. They maintained this purpose for a time, living in relative harmony with other races and shaping the land to better use. In these peaceful times, their leader was known as Neltharion, and his wisdom was renowned. Then came the madness that destroyed Neltharion's mind. The ultimate cause of his fall is unknown. Some scholars say that a favored child died before his eyes. Others claim that a powerful relic twisted his mind and soul. Whatever the cause, Neltharion ceased to exist, taking up a new name and a bitter purpose. He became Deathwing, and his subjects were placed beneath the iron rule of a tyrant. Deathwing used his power over earth and stone to force obedience upon his minions. He lowered the mountains and allowed the races to intermingle. He ruined fertile land and destroyed other terrain so that the races must fight for food. Deathwing's efforts gave birth to an occupation that has remained with all races since that day: war. As the Black Dragonflight followed their leader into madness, so did their powers. They are no more the guardians of Earth, but instead revel in fire and magma. Destruction is their art, and death is their goal. All other dragons of Azeroth fight against Deathwing's flight at every opportunity. Deathwing vanished not long ago, which has led to an unfettered feeding frenzy among his dragonflight, as all conspire to achieve dominance. Some claim that they receive regular messages from Deathwing, though none has been confirmed as yet. Others assert that Deathwing is dead and that a new monarch of their flight must be chosen. Infighting becomes ever more vicious and violent among the Black Dragons, with the conflict spilling into their surrounding territories. In Under Combat. Although overconfident, Black Dragons are canny. On spotting a target, Black Dragons may make a snap decision to attack rather than following and considering the enemy party's size or strength. Still, they will not land until all ranged fire has ended and the enemy seems routed. Black Dragons will not remain committed to battle unless certain they can win, or unless the enemy taunts them beyond the point of reason. They are not interested in material possessions, and are more than willing to leave behind physical goods. They are drawn to prisoners, particularly to nobles and children. If the situation seems desperate, a Black Dragon will flee with the prisoner in each clawed fist. Although they are not as large as some other dragonflights, they use daring and savage intellect to entrap and destroy their enemies. Black dragons prefer to flame their prey, trapping targets on dangerous ground before swooping in for the kill. They are vicious fighters and rarely retreat. They are most often encountered alone, as they are jealous of sharing kills with another. Still, families with a new clutch of drakes or a clutch of enslaved black dragons are not unknown. The culture of the Black Dragons is exceptionally violent and sadistic. It's a culture ruled by the strongest, with the weakest being enslaved, forced to do bidding for the stronger blacks, or are eaten, killed for entertainment, or experimented upon. Black dragons are large creatures that are very carnivorous and cannibalistic. They spend their time hunting as well as watching the various wars that take place across the face of Azeroth, and can often be found torturing their prisoners, unfortunate animals, or anything else they can capture. The aspect of the Black Flight, Deathwing, is one of the fiercest and most evil creatures in existence. In his lifetime alone, he has destroyed many ancient cities, whole indigenous life forms, fertile land, and entire civilizations. Deathwing often makes deals with the intelligent races, trading members of his dragonflight as slaves to other races or tortured mortals who were dragonsworn for objects of power, information, or to have those races do his bidding. The aspect of the Black Dragonflight rules with a tyrannical iron fist who demands worship with ultimate and complete submission from his flight members, or face death. Because the blacks are nearly extinct, mortals are highly unlikely to come across one in the wild, unless encroaching wittingly or unwittingly upon a black dragon's territory. Such territories would include the Burning Steppes, the Syrian Gorge, or other dark volcanic areas. Black dragons have long ago forsaken their master's cause to protect the world and seek only death, enslavement, and absolute power in the world. Despite the fact that they are so few in number, black dragons are exceptionally clever and are well informed with the current events and happenings in the world. They wait patiently for the right moments to strike, and doing so in violent outbursts. Many take humanoid forms to infiltrate mortal societies, to gain further information, and to hold positions of power and influence over the lesser races. They will send their Dragonsworn members or enslaved members to do their bidding from time to time, often sending them into very dangerous areas to deal with undesirables, where death is all but certain, to see how well they can handle themselves, or to make them prove their worth. Such examples would be sending them to deal with ogres or the Scourge. The Black Dragonflight seeks to avenge Deathwing, as he has gone missing, but as a society ruled by the strong, Deathwing's disappearance caused almost immediate infighting. The Blacks believe they are the strongest and most powerful Dragonflight, and as such, deserve the position of ruling over the world. With their ferocity, desire to commit evil, mastery of the dark arts, and knowledge of the secret places of the world, the Black Dragonflight is a formidable and an immediate threat to the whole of Azeroth. Black dragons were once Earthwarders, caring for stone and mountain, using their formidable abilities to cause the rise and fall of terrain. Then came the madness that destroyed an Eltharian's mind. The Black Dragonflight would follow their leader into this madness, as did their powers. He lowered mountains and destroyed land, so that races would be forced to intermingle with each other and would fight over their territories. The Black Dragons traded their powers of earth for the powers of fire and magma. Destruction became their art, and death was their goal. So evil and destructive had the Black Dragons become, all the other dragons of Azeroth have fought against Deathwing's flight at every opportunity. In modern times, black dragons are some of the most evil, iniquitous creatures known on the face of Azeroth. Black dragons are vicious, selfish beings that care only about their own desires and ambitions. They feel no companionship with their fellow flight members and will use each other as assets to further their own agenda and goals. They often fight amongst themselves to rise to positions of power within their flight and have no remorse or empathy for the lives of their own children. Before Deathwing's disappearance, the Black Dragons sought to emulate their Dark Master. A worm's goal in life was to become the foul Black Aspect's right hand, or even replace him entirely, caring little for any other Blacks that got in the way of this goal. Nowadays, the Black Dragonflight is locked in a civil war. With their leader missing from the Black Flight, each individual desires to become the new aspect of their evil kind. Most Black Dragons follow their instructions of another only if they expect a benefit, or they're confident that the other dragon will eat them if they don't. The symbol of the Black Dragonflight is a volcano, as it represents the great power of the earth and elements, as well as destruction, fire, and magma. Black Dragons' names may sometimes end with on for male and ia for female. Their names are often based on words synonymous with the color black, darkness, fire, or modifications of words usually used to describe an undesirable character trait. The preferred humanoid forms of the Black Dragonflight when in disguise amongst mortals are humans with black hair and dark eyes. Though Black Dragons can easily take other forms, humans have been especially useful. The powerful and semi-industrial human kingdoms could more easily accomplish the goals of Deathwing and his ilk than the nomadic Tauren, the magically minded High Elves, or the mountain-dwelling dwarves. Humans are also far less sensitive to the presence of dragons than other races. Night Elves, for instance, can identify a dragon with relative ease. A few known exceptions are Lady Sinastra, formerly known as Syntheria, who, when acting as an ambassador to the Dragonmaw clan, uses a blood elven guise, and the Blackwing Spellbinders and Blackwing Lair also take elven forms. The history of the Black Dragonflight can be traced back to the Titans. Before departing Azeroth, the Titans charged the greatest species of the world with the task of watching over it. See my previous video, The Charge of the Dragons under Warcraft History and Lore. Khaz'goroth, the Titan Shaper and Forger of the World, bestowed some of his immense power upon the mighty black worm, Neltharion. The great-hearted Neltharion, known afterwards as the Earth Warder, was given dominion over the earth and the deep places of the world. He embodied the strength of the world and served as Alexstrasza's greatest supporter. Black dragons were once like their aspect Neltharion, the defenders of Azeroth, living deep in the caverns of the earth. They shaped the land and raised mountains and created valleys. For countless millennia, the Black Dragons and the other flights lived in peace and harmony and worked together to safeguard Azeroth from all forms of violence and destruction. This time was peaceful, and the Blacks were renowned for keeping vigilance and care over the entire world of Azeroth. Until Neltharion fell prey to the whisperings of the old gods, leading his flight into the madness as well. The old gods had made precise timing on corrupting Neltharion with the Burning Legion's attempted invasion of Azeroth. Neltharion, having access to the deep places of the world, had unwittingly come across or too close to the old god's prisons, and his presence was immediately felt, as was his power and his influence. Almost immediately, the old gods began sending the corruptive whisperings to him, and Neltharion was driven further and further to madness. The other aspects attributed Neltharion's oddness to his displeasure with the actions of the bold, highborn Kaldori. The Highborn had opened a portal for the Burning Legion to pass through into the world of Azeroth, and the demons began their invasion of the world. Neltharion, having lost all sanity at this point, created the device called the Dragon Soul, later known as the Demon Soul, convincing his fellow aspects to impart in it a portion of their vast power. Unknown to the other aspects, however, Neltharion didn't contribute any of his own power to its creation. He claimed the device was to fight the Legion, but secretly he planned on using it to take control of all of Azeroth and make the Black Flight rulers of the world. Once he dubbed it complete, he made a spectacle of just how powerful the item was and devastated the Legion with it. However, the Black's betrayal was made known when Neltharion turned the device on the Night Elves and their allies, and eventually the other dragons, going as far as nearly erasing the Blue Dragonflight from existence. The shocked dragons were helpless to resist the power of the Dragon Soul, for it contained a fraction of the essence of each, with the exception of Neltharion himself. All the dragonflights, save Neltharion's own, were paralyzed in the air until the timely intervention of Kralistras, the youngest mate of the Red Dragon Queen, who had been absent from the initial use of the artifact. While Kralistras was no match for the mighty aspect of Earth, he was powerful enough to interrupt Neltharion's concentration for but a moment. This action is all the other dragons needed to free themselves from the paralysis and allowed them the opportunity to take action against Neltharion. Malygos, infuriated at the betrayal by one of his closest comrades, struck first, but at a great price. As the Blue Dragonflight flew into formation to attack Neltharion, the mighty Black Worm unleashed the full fury of the Dragon Soul's power against them, and the power instantly slew nearly every one of them. Malygos narrowly managed to erase a protective spell fast enough to survive, and only a handful of blues reached the safety of his barrier in time. As the other dragons turned to act, Neltharion was nowhere to be found, leaving the Blue Dragonflight completely broken in his wake. The mortal defenders managed to ultimately defeat and push back the Burning Legion, but also at a catastrophic price. The Kaldori race was nearly cut in half, from many being transformed into the Highborn and other new creatures. The war itself had brought about tens of thousands of casualties. The land also had been deeply scarred, and the world itself was sundered. The ensuing civil war between the Black Dragonflight and the other flights decimated the species, with all flights losing members, some more than others, and the Blacks were nearly driven to the brink of extinction. Deathwing's remaining consorts were slain by his own recklessness in the first few days of the war, greatly altering any future generations and changing the progress of the war effort dramatically. Ultimately, the Black Dragonflight was nearly wiped out, though the other flights never truly recovered themselves and would never again be seen in the same numbers as before. Thanks to Neltharion's own desires and actions, the Age of Dragons had finally passed. Immediately after the sundering, to ensure Deathwing would never hold power over Dragonkind again, Alexstrasza, Ursura, and Nozdormu placed an enchantment upon the demon soul so that no dragon, including Deathwing, could ever wield it, and hid the foul disc deep beneath the face of the earth of Azeroth. After having nearly wiped out the Blue Dragonflight, the Black Dragons were not ready to leave the last few blues in peace. The survivors of the Blue Dragonflight fled to Northrend, where the Blacks followed in pursuit. Deathwing soon attacked the Blue Dragons, slaughtering them by the dozens. The survivors fought back as best they could, but were no match for Deathwing's ferocity. In the process, their homes were destroyed, and the land so badly damaged it would never be able to recover. The area encompassing Deathwing's slaughter became known as the Dragon Blight. Over what is now Crystal Song Forest, another major battle between the Blacks and the Blues was waged, and many blue dragons were killed. Their magic released into the air and settled as glittering light on the ground, rocks, and trees. During the chaos of the battle, an elder blue worm beset by many Blacks unleashed a powerful spell to strip the life from his attackers and turn them into stone. The loose magic, however, blanketing the area, altered and amplified the spell, spreading it across the entire region and changing the soil, stone, forest, and flesh into living crystals. On the Azurmist Isles, another massive battle took place between the Blacks and the Greens. A particular brood of Ursurus was closely allied with the Night Elves of the Azurmist Isles, whom were ruled by Prince Torith. Ursura allowed the Night Elves there to ride her children into battle, and they were known as the Great Dragon Riders of Loreth Doran. Ursura's benevolence, however, would raise the ire of Deathwing, and he launched a massive surprise attack in the soon-to-be Dragon Wars against Wormscar Island, where the Dragon Riders slept. The Blacks, including Razormaw, Deathwing's lieutenant leading the operation, mercilessly slaughtered the Caldori. The Greens rose up to protect and defend their allies, but were unsuccessful. Not one Dragon Rider was spared, though many Blacks, including Razormaw himself, also perished in the battle. The skeletons and spirits of the murdered Greens still litter the small island, which has now become cursed. Razormaw's hatred for the Greens was so great that its restless spirit remained soaring high overhead, forever haunting the island. It wouldn't be long after this that the war between the flights ignited all across the face of Azeroth. In the early years following the Sundering, Deathwing's Black Flight attempted to subjugate the Bronze Dragons. The assault was unsuccessful, primarily because the Bronze Dragons didn't stay and fight as expected. Nosdormu was able to use his command of time to see the Black's plans and alerted his flight of the coming danger. The Bronze Dragonflight scattered to the four corners of the globe, where they would continue to monitor the events of the world. During the Second War, Deathwing had finally been given his opportunity to eradicate Alexstrasza and her flight. Deathwing was unable to wield the Demon Soul himself, but it could be placed in the hands of a being that would use it against his enemies on his behalf. Deathwing sent visions of the powerful artifact to the chieftain of the Dragonmaw clan, the orc shaman named Zuluhead the Whacked. With Doomhammer's permission, Zuluhead took his clan to search for the artifact's source. He was eventually able to find the device and claimed the disc for the Horde. But while he sensed its great and terrible power, it was unresponsive to his shamanistic powers. Because of this, the device was given to his lieutenant, the warlock Necro Skullcrusher, whose magic the disc eerily reciprocated. With more visions coming to him, the Dragonmaw clan would begin a rapid search, lasting weeks for some kind of terrible and powerful creature, the dragons. Finally spotting a lone wounded red male, the orcs followed the dragon back to the Red Flight's lair, in a high mountain peak, where they came upon the Dragon Queen herself, roosting with 3 consorts. The aspect immediately incinerated 4 orc warriors before Necros invoked the dark powers of the Dark Disc and subdued her. The Demon Soul was used to enslave Alexstrasza and most of her flight, turning them into the Horde's powerful new weapons of war and changing the course and history of how war would be fought on Azeroth forever. Having his plan work perfectly as he desired, Deathwing began a new campaign of exterminating the Reds that had been left behind and were all but helpless without their queen or any of her consorts to guide them. The Reds who had avoided capture by the orcs were initially bewildered to find their queen had gone missing. The remaining flight members scattered to the 4 corners of Azeroth searching for her, becoming easy prey for the vicious Deathwing and his Black Dragonflight, who attacked them mercilessly and was pleased to see the suffering he brought upon them. Isolated, leaderless, and confused, the Reds fought back as best they could, but were no match for the constant attacks from the Blacks, and were forced to postpone their search and launch a decisive counterattack to keep the Blacks at bay, leaving their mission to find their beloved queen behind. When the blacks had been sufficiently pushed back, the reds resumed the search and eventually found, after several years had passed, that the orcs were responsible for Alexstrasza and the rest of the flight's disappearance. Outraged and horrified to discover the orcs were using her offspring as cannon fodder in the Second War, the Reds pushed for an immediate assault and desire to make war against all of the lesser races and to eradicate them off of the face of Azeroth forever. But her youngest consort, Coralistras, disguised as the mage Crossus of the Kirin Tor, sought a way to free his mate, and he began a long and tedious quest which would eventually free not just his queen in flight, but would save the whole world from the Reds' wrath. After the orcs had been repelled and forced back into Draenor, the Horde recollected itself and planned for another invasion of Azeroth. During the orcs' second intrusion into Azeroth, the Black Dragonflight briefly joined the Horde. Seeking magical artifacts, Ner'zhul had sent a party under Terran Gorfin to Blackrock Spire to bring the Blackrock clan back into the fold and to acquire their red dragons. Rend refused, however, and Terran left defeated. But they were soon approached by Deathwing. Deathwing presented the Death Knight with an offer. He would lend his aid and his children to the Horde in return for safe passage of his flight and his eggs into the world of Draenor. Gorfin accepted, and the Black Aspect summoned his flight to him. Before departing, however, Deathwing spoke with Nefarian and Onyxia, asking them to remain on Azeroth and take command of the orcs left within the spire. The remaining members of the Black Dragonflight, led by Deathwing and his lieutenant, Sibelian, allowed the orcs to ride upon them in order to retrieve the needed artifacts. Ner'zhul quickly pulled the Horde back to Draenor. The Black Dragons, taking special care of the eggs, crossed through the dark portal, which would ultimately spell their undoing. Deathwing spoke with Ner'zhul, bidding his farewell and taking the Skull of Gul'dan. A few blacks stayed with the Horde at Hellfire Citadel, but the bulk of the flight settled within the valley of the Blade's Edge Mountains, where they could tend to the delicate eggs. Their presence there, however, was not welcomed by Gruul, father of the Graan, and ruler of the Ogres. Gruul and his subjects, assisted by members of the Alliance expedition sent to recover the skull, attacked the drakes that were left to defend the black eggs. Deathwing was outraged by the destruction of his precious eggs and fought back, only to be driven off by the strategic spell from Khadgar. Sibelian managed to escape as well. The remaining black dragons, now leaderless, quickly fell to the fury of Gruul's children, crushed and impaled upon the mountain spires. This was nearly the ultimate extinction of the Black Dragonflight, as their numbers went from hundreds to mere dozens. Following this, during the climatic battle on Draenor, Ner'zhul opened several portals to allow the Horde to escape through, which began to tear Draenor apart, and soon the planet was going through its death throes. Deathwing quickly escaped back to Azeroth, abandoning his remaining progeny on the doomed world. Then the Cataclysm came, and Draenor was shattered. Only what would become known as Outland remained. With it came the eradication of the Black Dragons from Outland as the Graan continued their slaughter in the devastated world. Many of the surviving Black Dragon eggs were exposed to the twisting nether, and the dragons that emerged were no longer truly members of the Black Flight. These ethereal dragons would later come to be known as the Nether Dragons. Back on Azeroth, the Blacks were now exceptionally weak and nearly extinct. Seeking a way to repair his flight, Deathwing, who was believed to have been brought down in battle against the Kirin Tor, secretly assumed the guise of Lord Davil Prestor while biding his time. He devised a plan to steal the eggs of his greatest foe, Alexstrasza, who was still enslaved by the Dragonmaw clan under Necros, whom was now stationed at the great mountain fortress known as Grim Batol. Not wanting to possibly damage the eggs by directly assaulting Grim Batol, Deathwing sought a way to force the orcs into bringing the eggs out into the open, where he could more easily steal them. He fooled Necros into believing the Alliance planned on invading the mountain fortress, and the Warlock ordered to have Alexstrasza, Tyrannostraz, and her eggs moved out of the mountain and towards Dunal Gas, where the bulk of the Dragonmaw clan was stationed and preparing for war. Once the orcs had followed the desired path and were out in the open, Deathwing assaulted the caravan and began to steal the egg, but his plan went awry. Necros had sent the elder worm Tyrannostraz to battle Deathwing, who was no match for the powerful black aspect, and was quickly killed. However, soon following this, a massive army of mountain dwarfs assaulted Necros' clan, and Coralistras, with the help of the other aspects, managed to free Alexstrasza. With all the aspects united together, they launched a decisive counterattack against Deathwing, putting him on the defensive, and during the ensuing chaos, Necros lost the Demon Soul, which was ultimately destroyed by Ronan, a mage of Dalaran, in the battle now known as the Battle of Grim Batol. Ronan had been secretly sent on a mission to rescue the Dragon Queen by none other than the red dragon Coralistras and his mortal guise, known as Crosses. Once free of the device's power, Alexstrasza killed Necros out of pure hatred and a mad drive for vengeance. The demon soul was then undone, and the power that was vested in it returned to the other aspects. With their powers finally restored to them, Alexstrasza and the other aspects overwhelmed and easily chased off Deathwing, who was no match for the fully restored aspects. It would be many years before Deathwing would appear again in one final attempt to destroy the world and subdue his fellow aspects. The eggs that he had taken were quickly recovered afterwards. Like the other Dragonflights, the Black Dragonflight did not play any significant role in the events of the Third War. Arthas Menthol, then Prince of Lordaeron, did however assist a group of Dwarven dragon hunters track down and slay the Black Dragon, Serenox. Malfurion Stormrage also encountered a small group of black whelps and drakes hiding in the Barrows Deeps, and was quick to dispatch the vile beasts. After the defeat of the Legion in the Third War, the remaining Black Dragons were locked in a state of civil war, fighting over who would become the new ruler of the flight. Eventually, Nefarian and Onyxia managed to take control over a large portion of the flight, and the two plotted on how to scour Azeroth of the mortal races and other dragonflights. Following their defeat, their mother Syntheria took up her son's failed experiments before being defeated herself. Their experiments would not be in vain, however, as the patriarch of the flight, Deathwing, would continue on with their work. In World of Warcraft, Onyxia's brood resides in Dustwallow Marsh. However, the brood mother herself is often gone. Onyxia has disguised herself as a noble of Stormwind, much like her father once did with Lordaeron, influencing the Child King Anduin Wrynn and interfering with the armies of Stormwind from being used for their intended purposes, including protecting the Alliance lands from the orcish armies of her brother Nefarian. Her true identity was eventually discovered by Marshal Reginald Windsor, whom, unfortunately for the Alliance, was captured by the Dark Iron Dwarves of Shadowforge and Blackrock Depths. Nefarian also wears a human guise and is known as Victor Nefarious, and has taken control of Blackrock Spire and the Dark Horde. The Dark Horde has barricaded itself inside Blackrock Mountain under the control of the false warchief Rend Blackhand, and they are constantly fighting the Dark Iron Dwarfs of Shadowforge and their fiery master, Ragnaros, that resides in the depths of the volcano. Nefarian and his brood are at work creating a chromatic dragonflight, with the powers of all the flights combined to release on the fire elementals and eventually all of the races of Azeroth. In order to do so, they have began striking out against the other flights, kidnapping whelps, such as the blue whelps of Mas Thoril, to be used in their experiments. Black Dragon's servants of Nefarian can be found as far north as the Badlands and all the way south to the Red Ridge Mountains, most often making their home in the Burning Steppes. But the most powerful are located inside the spire. Blackwing Lair, Nefarian's laboratory and seat of power, is filled with the mightiest servants of Deathwing's prodigy, including elite orcs, mad goblins, various dragonkin, and members of the new chromatic Dragonflight. In the Burning Crusade, a number of black dragons abandoned on Outland still reside in the Blade's Edge Mountains. Many of the dragons met their end at the hands of Gruul, the Dragon Killer, and his sons, and can be seen impaled on the rocky spires at Dragon's End. The Black Dragon Sibelian seeks revenge for the death of his children. The Black Seer are revered by a mortal organization known as the Worm Cult. They are led by the dragonid Maxnar the Ashmaw, operating from Blackwing Coven in Raven's Wood. Overlord Morgor, servant of Illidan Stormrage on Netherwing Ledge, has recently been approached by an emissary from the Black Flight, Lady Sinastra. Lady Sinastra claims their master, Deathwing, is alive and well, and is interested in recovering the nether dragons Morgor has been grooming for Illidan, as they are the Black Aspect's progeny. Morgor, once an unwitting servant of Deathwing, quickly agrees to this. This act would begin the slow recovery of the Black Dragons, raising their numbers and saving them from total extinction. In Wrath of the Lich King, the Blue Dragonflight in their militaristic campaign has laid siege to Wyrmrest Temple in the Dragonblight. The remaining Dragonflights have formed the Wyrmrest Accord, an alliance defending the temple against the Blue Flight. The Black Dragonflight has sent Nellis as their ambassador. Recently, the Undead Scourge has laid siege to the surrounding 5 dragon shrines in an effort to raise terrifying new variations of undead dragons. Nalus sends adventurers to Serenar at the Obsidian Dragon Shrine to fight off the forces of the Lich King to keep them from bringing back black dragons from the grave under his control. Sometime after the Nexus War ended, a powerful war party of the Black Dragonflight, led by the fearsome Twilight Dragon Halion, launched an assault upon the Ruby Sanctum beneath the Wyrmrest Temple. By destroying the sanctum, the Black Dragonflight looked to crush those that would stand in their way of their master's re-emergence into Azeroth, and to ultimately shatter the Wyrmrest Accord. In Cataclysm, Deathwing finally makes his return as the main antagonist. Apparently, after the events of the Battle of Grim Batol, Deathwing took refuge in the elemental realm of Deepholm, a realm accessible to him, but not the other aspects, due to his former role as the Earth Warder. There, Deathwing gathered his followers and created Elementium armor, which was designed to both protect him as well as enhance and contain his increasingly unstable power. After bidding his time for years, Deathwing had the armor permanently nailed onto his body and destroyed the barrier between Azeroth and Deepholm, erupting forth into Azeroth with such fury that it caused the Great Shattering, forever altering the face of Azeroth. Following his return, the scattered remnants of the Black Dragonflight quickly rallied to his banner. Influenced by the old gods more so than ever before, Deathwing added the armies of Ragnaros, Alakir the Windlord, and the Twilight Cult to his own Dragonflight in a final bid to destroy both the Red Dragonflight and Nordrassil. Although insane from the mad whisperings of the old gods, Deathwing marshaled every ounce of his power and influence to ensure a legacy of a powerful Black Dragonflight. Knowing that his own power would eventually consume him, he redoubled his efforts to reconstitute the Dragonflight by any means possible, both natural and unnatural. To this end, he forcibly impregnated at the very least one female, and also resurrected his son, Nefarian, who then would resurrect Onyxia. Deathwing would also resurrect his prime consort, Sinastra. Nefarian was resurrected for the purpose of continuing his work. Although the three remaining aspects, Alexstrasza, Ursera, and Notstormu, initially found themselves on the defensive against a united Black Dragonflight and their allies, they were able to enlist the help of Azeroth's greatest champions to undermine Deathwing's plans and turn the tide of the new war. The remaining Dragonflights reluctantly agreed that the Black Dragonflight was beyond any salvation, and undertook a concerted effort to completely eradicate the entire flight from existence. At least one red dragon, Rheastraza, still saw hope for the Black Dragons, and tried her best to create a black egg that was free from Deathwing's inherited evil and corruption. Despite the Aspect's attempts to thwart her goals, Rhea was successful in creating an uncorrupted hatchling in the form of Wrathion. Following the ultimate defeat of both Deathwing and his allies, the remainder of the Black Dragonflight was finally exterminated by the other flights. At current, only 2 members are known to exist, Sibelian in Outland and Wrathion in Azeroth. With currently no known females to breed with, it is quite possible that these 2 represent the last remaining Black Dragons to exist. Only time will tell if the flight can somehow rise from the ashes of extermination. In Mist of Pandaria, Wrathion is now the only Black Dragon in Azeroth at the moment, primarily located at the Veiled Stair. He is instrumental in the legendary questline that awards a legendary cloak. So this basically sums up everything regarding both the species and the history of the Black Dragonflight. Blizzard has changed much in regards to the Black Flight. Again, with nearly all the other dragons, their appearance, but also the fact that in WoW, they don't or will not trade their secrets or objects of power to anyone anymore, but only to those who have the same cause as they themselves have. They used to trade members of their own flight as an attempt of bribery from other races, or to simply sell them off as slaves. In fact, the orcs and the Horde used Black Dragons in the original RPG as their flying mounts, and they still had a great desire, connection, and love for the dragons. Yet the orcs refused to enslave them as they did in the Second War. They got around this obstacle, however, by purchasing Black Dragons from slave traders in markets. Like the Reds, the Blacks are also among the more powerful dragon types. This is attributed to the fact that they not only have the powers of influence over the earth, but they have also obtained the secrets of the dark arts, are masters of corruptive influence and twisting of the natural forces. They have learned many of the other flight's secrets, albeit not to the extent and mastery of them, and have mastered destruction unlike any other creature on Azeroth. A Black's fire is also unique in that the flames are so hot and potent, the mere heat of its flames will both sear and burn flesh and soil alike, before it is encompassed by the flames that follow behind and consumes everything in its rage. The Black Dragons are some of the most evil, tyrannical, despicable, crafty, and tragic of not just the dragons, but of any species in Warcraft. They were once one of the mightiest and noblest of creatures on Azeroth, and ultimately became one of its greatest threats, forsaking any vows and embrace every evil intention imaginable. They long ago gave up their charge to protect Azeroth, and both seek its ultimate destruction and mock their fellow Dragonflight members who still honor the Titans and their charge. They hold no moral values or maintain any moral compass. the Blacks will do anything and everything to secure victory and success. They feel as if they have nothing left to lose and have everything to gain. This makes them exceptionally dangerous, as they virtually will do anything imaginable or unimaginable to ensure their victory, with many occasions leading them to act out in cowardly acts, taking hostages, sacrificing their own family members, among many other similar actions. They have no loyalty, only obedience and fear, which rules over the Black Flight, with virtues and prestige all but a memory to them. Black dragons attribute such virtues like honor and courage as nothing more than a hindrance to the Black Flight's cause. However, they will use prestige and wit to further their own ambitions, or when in mortal disguise. Cleverness and Machiavellian are traits highly encouraged in the Black Flight and associated with them. The Blacks are both jealous and envious of the Reds, as they were once the rulers and overseers of all the other flights, including the Blacks. They naturally hold disdain and contempt for all the other flights, but they hold a special hatred for the Reds, as the Reds continue to clash the most against the Blacks, and it is the flight that is owned and ruled over by the Dragon Queen herself, Alexstrasza. The Reds interact the most with the Blacks, confronting them at any and every opportunity, and have stopped them numerous times. They have also influenced the other flights to hunt them to or near to extinction. As a result, the Blacks were never able to fully recover, and hate the Reds more so than any other creature on Azeroth. Mortals are unlikely to interact with Blacks, as they are so few in number and greatly feared. Mortals are well aware of the Blacks' reputations and actively try to avoid them or territories they're likely to reside in. Mortals have come across them, however, at locations near or around volcanoes, or may be unfortunate enough to come across a Blacks' operations, such as an assault on Ashara or in the Red Ridge Mountains. Mortals that serve the Black Flight either do so out of fear, have been enslaved, or were dragon sworn in, out of a desire to both worship the Blacks and seek great power from them. Though any such mortal who was foolish enough to believe a Black would grant said mortal any such power is amusing to the Blacks. Of all the things that could be said about the Blacks, it would be that they are heartless and cruel creatures who will stop at nothing to get what they want. They'll obey their master, going to certain death, only out of fear to face an even worse torment. They are overconfident and impatient, irascible and exceptionally powerful, terrifying and malevolent, sinister and wicked, cunning and manipulative. The Blacks love such descriptions to be attributed to them. Such words boost their egos and sense of worth and accomplishments. A Black may seek to commit evil out of mere amusement, or simply out of boredom, and a love to commit such actions. Others may wipe out whole populations simply to gain a reputation for themselves, or to gain respect, authority, and power in their flight. The Blacks seek only to follow and do Deathwing's will, or to pursue their own evil ambitions and to further cause chaos and destruction in the world of Azeroth. They hold the desire to rule as their number one goal and cause, and everything they do is to further this goal. The Blacks often orchestrate wars and conflicts with the mortal races, sometimes intentionally or unintentionally involving the other flights to further this goal, or sometimes out of amusement and to watch from afar in enjoyment to see the destruction and havoc the mortal races cause to each other. The Blacks know mortal politics probably more so than any of the other flights, and hold positions of power and influence in many human kingdoms. They often use the mortals' bitterness towards each other or sense of greed against them. One can never overestimate the power and fury of black dragons. Not just the dragons or mortals, but all of Azeroth and Outland have come to both fear and flee from the terrifying shadows of the Blacks. Alright, so this is it for today. This concludes the trivia of the Black Dragonflight. Thank you for watching today's episode. If you want to see more episodes and comparisons, please subscribe to my channel and like this video. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to message me. Also, don't forget about our Facebook page that is up and running. The link to that is in the About box. Until next time, I will see you on the next episode.